Welcome to the show. I'm JJ Flazanes.
I am Doug Sandler. We are back.
We're back. Today is not a Q&A.
Trouble in Paradise.
Today's Trouble in Paradise.
Oh, boy.
Because one of the things I think is important to convey to those in podcast land, yes, that's you listening in your car while you're driving or while you're walking, or at the gym, is that I don't do fake, and I'm not that person who's just going to show you all of the, which you guys know that about me. For crying out loud, I've cried on the show how many times. But you're in time with us, and one of the things that was talked about early on in our relationship was, is this a rebound? And we're in this stage of honeymoon phase, and of course, we all know that ends.
Hold on. Are you breaking up with me?
Oh, dear Lord.
Tell.
No.
Oh, good.
Yeah, like I'm going to do that on a recorded show.
I wasn't really sure.
Okay.
I was pretty sure, but I wasn't 100% sure.
Right.
Whew. That was a close one.
But we have moved out of honeymoon phase. There have been several arguments in the last 30 days.
Wow. It ended kind of quickly, that honeymoon phase. It just kind of it just fades.
Well, it's about a year.
Yeah. No, I mean, when it ends, it ends. Honeymoon phase ends.
Yeah.
And then it's like cold turkey. You're in now. Now you're in the relationship. You're in the thick of it.
Yeah. There were two sort of back-to-back instances, which we're not going to go over both of them.
Good, because I can't
in
cry anymore.
Depth. Oh, goodness. You're so beaten down. You're so abused, Doug Sandler.
I have such feminine energy that I've worn through it all. My man is back. my manhood is back.
That's good.
I got the membership card in the mail, and I am back along with AARP. So I'm here. I'm good.
Good. Can we get serious now?
Okay, I'm serious. I'm ready to go.
Okay.
How do you know our community doesn't want a little humor thrown in there to boot?
They probably do, but I don't.
Okay.
I live with you, remember?
I understand. You get my humor 24/7.
Yep, all the time.
Ad nauseum.
All the time. So the first, there were, like I said, two back-to-back kind of arguments, and I could start to feel myself having some of the fears that came out of my last relationship. Like, oh no, here we go again. Things that, oh, are we doing this again? Is this going to happen again? And how is this going to unfold? What are the habits and patterns that are going to be created? And I didn't go down a deep, dark rabbit hole because it didn't last that long. But what I did, one of the days that we were doing our practice, is I asked Doug if we could substitute reading separate books and doing our letter to the CSO to do the couples dialogue from the Imago program.
Oh, yeah. That was good.
Right. Well, that's kind of what I want to share.
Oh, I didn't know that. I wasn't sure where we were going. I thought we were going to rehash the conversation over again. I had to defend myself all over again. Finally, I knew I was right. Okay. Anyhow.
So one of the benefits of doing work and having tools is that you can use the tools when you need them. And this was a situation where, when you're triggered, and I've talked about this on the show before, triggers and balance, the time to have the conversation isn't when you're having a trigger moment because you're in high emotion. So let's say that we had whatever argument one day and then we let it go and we kind of danced around it a little bit. We didn't completely ignore it, but we didn't tackle the why or what it was about.
Did you notice it came back in 2 days?
Well, that was a different.
I know. No, I'm saying I realize that, but oftentimes in relationships, that's exactly what happens. If you don't have the right tools, it's not like that argument ends and you're okay, and then you move on to the next subject the next day, and everything is great, and then the next time you have the argument, guess what resurfaces?
It's the resentment that was not dealt with from the first argument, because
Right.
in your mind, not you, Doug Sandler, but in the mind of the person who's been triggered, you feel justified. You have a story. You think you're right. You are expecting an apology. You're looking for a behavioral change. You're standing on your high horse on your soapbox about something, and you haven't necessarily looked at it from another point of view, or you're too afraid to have the conversation because of where it might go. And so we had not done the couples dialogue since January when we went to Esalen and did the Getting the Love You Want workshop. And when we were there, and in fact, Helen and Harville are coming back on the show. They've developed a whole nother presentation and certification around this dialogue. They call it Safe Conversations. And we're going to do another show probably in a couple of months when they're done with their tour. They've been like all over the world teaching, but we're going to talk about Safe Conversations, because even though it's a script and it feels at first like you're going to have to read and follow this, we did notice how impactful it was back in January at Esalen. Now, we were still in honeymoon phase, so there wasn't that much stuff that we felt like we needed to dig through. But with all this move and with my emotions and then your emotions and relationship to my emotions, it's been a heated time. And I thought, what a better way to deal with this and to have this conversation about one of these topics than to bring out some structure and some guidelines that we both have done. And I do appreciate that you agreed.
Well, I think it was necessary. Either that or you were going to beat me up. I was so much happier to do the dialogue anyway. So this was good. And it was good. It gave me a chance to create, we did this for both of us. Part of the dialogue is creating a safe space so that you both have the ability to share what your feelings and talk about what you think those feelings are rooted in. And I think it's good. I think it really is very helpful, and it does give you, as the receiver of the information, a lot of great information to hear what your partner is going through. So, all things being said, it was a great experience, and I knew it would be. Sometimes you have to kind of you have to put your feelings, which is why it's challenging to do it when you're in the middle of being triggered. But you have to put those feelings aside, and you just have to listen. You have to listen without judgment. And that's very difficult for a lot of people to do that, I think.
I think it is, because especially the longer you go, the more resentment builds up. And I would probably say that a couple's dialogue about past issues that aren't quite as hot would be a place to start for people if you have any of the workbook, or if you have attended the next big step, although I didn't give anybody this dialogue. You'll get it when you come to the couples retreat, or if you've gone to any of Harville's workshops, or if you do, then you'll get it from him. But the Safe Conversation really was a good place for me. I mean, I remember we did this about 2 weeks ago from the recording of this episode, and one of the things that I did not get in any relationship actually until now is the ability, the vulnerability, and the safety of having seriously an ugly cry. I won't even ugly cry in front of certain therapists. Now, I'll ugly cry in front of Lisa Thomas because she's like my mother / best friend / goddess, fairy godmother. And no one has seen me more clearly than her from the beginning. So, we love each other to death, and I feel safe. So I have ugly cried in front of her, but I haven't ugly cried in front of anyone. And I was literally a freaking mess 2 weeks ago, being able to express something that not only did I get the opportunity to tell you and show you the amount of pain and frustration I was having, it also brought up an awareness in me of a trigger that I discount. So the trigger is this whole move, and how when I was younger, I never moved from my childhood home. I was born and raised in the same home until I left for college. However, I don't know what it was, but there would be times where if I had friends that like moved from out of town, or friends that were moving, or if I had a thought about us moving or selling the house or something, I got so upset. I would literally cry at the thought of moving while I was in high school or junior high. We never moved, and no one ever talked about moving. I don't know. I mean, it's literally like a wound that came out of nowhere, or a past life, because it was so deep that I didn't understand why. Like, I don't even know if I shared it with my parents, because they would have said, "No, we're not moving." Why would you even think that? Like, there was no indication of that. But something about the idea of being ripped from a foundation that you feel safe in really bothered me, and I didn't understand it until this move. Because I've moved before. I willingly moved to New York City, had several apartments, moved to California, I've had several places. And all of a sudden, I'm now back to my 8-year-old self crying about something that just feels so, just shaken my foundation.
Was this the first move that you had that somebody actually said you have to move by?
Yes.
Okay, so that, I mean, I don't mean to simplify it to that, but maybe that is why that trigger came up, because this was the first move that was not inside your control. Maybe part of it is a control thing. Maybe I don't really know. I don't know if we're going to reach the conclusion of why. It doesn't matter why. It's just, it is a wound that you have.
Well, what is great about it, the twofold great thing about all of this, is in my expression to you, so you could see and hear and possibly feel the depth at which I was having an issue. This wasn't just an irritation and a mindset shift. This was a deep core wound, if you will, of I don't know what, but something. And then it allowed me to realize it's something else I needed to clear. So since that conversation, I have had a session with Lisa, and we did clear that. And funny, as I'm having the session, I'm pretty calm and centered. Like I don't work with Lisa all the time. I work with her every so often, but I've been doing it consistently enough that every issue, it has decreased the trigger. Like I feel more and more calm, more and more centered, less triggered about certain things that maybe I was in a knot about before. And so I was pretty calm for most of the session until the move came up, and I still had remnants of something about that. So we cleared that. But so the point being that, when you have, and this is what I love about the Imago work, when you have an issue with your spouse, with your partner, with your friend, it really all relates back to a core wound. Our core wound that you're trying to get from one of your parents through a situation, through a spouse, through a partner, through even work and the work that you do in the world. And when you don't get it, you behave in a certain way. And so the safe conversations, the couples dialogue, not only walks you through expressing your thoughts and feelings about what it is, it also tells you to link it to something from your past, which is why the episode that Doug and I did with Harville and Helen was called Dethroning the Therapist, because it's having you really go back and link this situation to why you potentially could feel this way. And I know for me, this was a good eye-opener, because I always look at triggers as something, oh, great, something else I can heal. I don't look at a trigger and go, oh, like, I'm not trying to defend my wounds. I actually, after the fact, enjoy, like when you and I had that first conversation or first argument about the habits and patterns that we both are repeating from our past relationships, while you were very upset, you did not like me very much, you had a lot of fear, I did not like it either. But honestly, at the same time, as badly as I felt in that moment, I also felt this immense amount of hope that it means now that we have each other and we are agreeing to help each other, that we actually can heal it. Because these are issues that you don't heal outside of a relationship. They're issues you heal inside of a relationship. So I had an immense amount of hope about, oh my God, we're finally going to get to the bottom of this. We're finally going to have breakthrough with this, because now we have committed to each other. We want to do it.
I think the only concern that I raise as a part of what you're just saying just now is that there are a number of people that are, I'm sure, in our community that are listening to this and thinking, but I'm the only one. I'm the only one. I'm the only one that's willing to work through this. This is why I'm having a problem with my spouse. And maybe they don't see, or significant other, maybe they don't see why the problem just continues. They don't have what we have. We have the ability, although triggered and although feeling really wounded at the time, even though I knew that we had the tools to get through it, it still makes you are an anomaly. I mean, you look at things and think, oh, here's an opportunity for solution. Most people look at this as, oh shit, here is just for me another opportunity where I'm going to actually wallow in this for a while. I don't know how to get out. I don't know how to get out. I don't know how to get out. So while I agree with you, I think it's great that we have what we have. You approach this from a completely different perspective that I do. You look at the problem and see the opportunity in the problem. And many people, and I would say partly me too, because I'm nowhere near as far along this journey as you are. Some people look at this and say, I don't want to hear that wound. Please, I don't want to. Oh, that wound, that's a bad one. I don't want to repeat that. I want to avoid having to move. I want to avoid having to have non-communicative relationships. I want to avoid the conversation about a poor sex life. I want to avoid all of these conversations, and I want to carefully tread with the people that are in the challenging spot just to get to where we are. Forget the conversations, but just even be able to have the conversation.
So before you came on the scene, part of my entire empowerment message for people was that you didn't need two people. Not that I'm saying it's nicer to have two people, and we're where we are right now with each other because of our own journey and our own path. But there's a lot of progress that can be made. We heard it, one of the participants of the 30-day manifestation challenge went through some of this process and wrote this big long email within the challenge about her relationship status and how one simple shift with her partner, not actually focusing on her partner, but focusing on herself, shifted him. And all of a sudden, out of the woodwork, he changed his complete attention to what he was working on and his willingness to participate, and he was showing up in the ways that she wanted him to show up before.
So what the reason I even said all of that was for that point is that the idea behind it is even if you have a non-willing participant in your spouse or partner, that is no reason not to try. It's no reason not to change how you are affected and react and your emotions towards your wounds, because when your partner sees the reaction that you have, they are going to in turn react differently than you getting all angry with your partner for something that is not really their problem. It's your wound. So just keep that in mind as you are listening to this and thinking, well, I don't have a partner like Doug, or I don't have a partner like JJ, or I don't have a partner that's willing to come to the table and help me solve the problem. You do not need your partner to solve this problem.
You don't even need a partner. It's one of my biggest regrets is not doing the Imago work by myself earlier on. I literally avoided it and didn't do it because I thought, well, I'm going to wait till I can do it with a partner. And I'm going to wait for my partner to be ready to do it. And of course, I manifested a situation where that partner was willing to do that work, but by that point it was too late. And had I been able to maybe heal some of my own wounds earlier, because some of it comes down to just me, and you can work on your stuff and you can change your point of attraction. And in fact, I'm working with someone right now who has done a lot of great work, and she is coaching because she's unclear about what's sort of going wrong. And this work of the Imago and looking at attaching it to something of your core wounds, something that you're looking to heal through all of your relationships and the work you do in the world. Now we're starting to look at, oh, well, this is why I keep choosing people. And if I'm conscious about that, then I can change the frequency at which I'm elevated to sort of call somebody in. If we do not understand sort of our own behavior on this level, then you just keep repeating the patterns and say, well, I don't know, I'm just attracted to who I'm attracted to because I'm attracted to them. And if you don't see what's underneath it, then you can't adjust it. You're never going to, it's just going to continue to repeat itself.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. You are going to repeat the same situations over and over and over again if you don't take a deeper dive from within. And it is not about your partner. It is about you. It's not about what you're attracting or not attracting. It's about how you respond to what's going on in your life that is critical in this whole process.
One of the show titles that I came up with on a walk that we were on after one of our practices, I think last week, I'm just going to say it here, and I'm not going to actually do that show. I'm just going to add it into this episode. But it was the show was going to be called "Don't Teach Your Spouse." Try not to teach your spouse. Like never, ever teach your partner. And what I mean by that is, I've spent a lifetime. I have so much Sag in me. I'm all about truth seeking. I'm also all about figuring it out for myself as well, because I do believe that you can change so many things about your relationships just by changing yourself. And we were taking a walk and we had just started reading. So for one of the other trigger issues that was happening between the two of us, I asked Doug if we could start reading a book together. And in his wonderful way and in his readiness in his life said yes. So we started to read a book, and we'll talk more about that later. And I think we were maybe only went through the introduction and a couple different chapters. And then we were on our walk and he said something. You said something like, yeah, that's me. Yeah, I agree with that. I do that. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I have said this before, like probably 6 months to a year ago. I have said these exact words. And now I'm not triggered at all when he says this. I'm just happy that he's saying it and that he heard it because he heard it differently because it wasn't coming through me. Not offended at all. My whole Fit to Love podcast show, as you know, was really for my husband because I wanted him to be able to hear what he wouldn't hear from me, from somebody else. So I got really excited about recording a show that was going to be called Under No Circumstance Do You Teach Your Partner, because it's in how we're built. It's in this masculine feminine balance. It's in this not peer-to-peer, not friendship, not teacher-student. Doesn't mean you're not going to learn from each other. I learn from Doug. Doug learns from me. But when you approach it like the teacher, when you approach it from that position, even when you're 200% right, even when you've said it 15 times. Okay, let's talk about Bulletproof Coffee for a second.
I do love my Bulletproof Coffee. Thank you, Michael Neely.
Right. Right. So New Year's Eve, we're with Michael Neely. He makes Bulletproof Coffee. Doug and I have been living together for 6 months. Do you not think I've made Bulletproof Coffee at least every day? And said, hey, do you want to try this? No. Okay. It's okay. 6 months later, Michael Neely says, here's Bulletproof Coffee. Doug's like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Well, it did have a couple of ingredients different than yours. It did have real cream in it, and even though I'm lactose intolerant,
his did not have cream, honey. His had salted butter. I don't even put salt in mine. His had salted butter and coffee.
Okay, it was delicious.
And coconut oil, actually. I'll tell you Michael's recipe. It's different than the one you make right now.
Yeah, the way that I make it right now is the ingredients that I really like, and it gives it that full, rich flavor of Bulletproof Coffee without being probably the authentic Bulletproof Coffee. And I just tease you because I know that you introduced me to it, but Michael Neely was the one that was the catalyst to actually get me to start trying it. Now, every morning I get up, I go through my whole process. I break out the blender, it is a lot of work in order to make this. Use a French press. I mean, I do it the right way. And it's probably a 5 to 8 minute, maybe a 10-minute process. But who has to be in a hurry in the morning? Just get up 10 minutes earlier if you need to. Fortunately, because of JJ, I'm independently wealthy. So I don't need to get up early or anything. I don't actually have to work anymore. Thanks, JJ.
Yeah, you're welcome. But the point here is obviously,
you're my
right?
Oprah. You're my Oprah. I'm your, what's his name? Harpo? No. What the heck is
Stedman.
his name? Stedman. I'm your Stedman.
Harpo. That would be the name of her
company, right?
Which is
right.
Oprah spelled backwards.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she's closed the studios, but I don't think she has Harpo anymore. She's got OWN. Anyway, as we digress, it's just the funny point. And women, and my mom still does it today. Women, you don't feel heard or seen because you'll say something and your man won't listen to you, and then all of a sudden he'll hear it from someone else, and you'll be like, "Are you kidding me? I said that." Okay, here's
Let it go. Let it go.
Here's the message that I have for you about that, because it's such a classic relationship issue. Just expect it. Expect that your spouse, men and women in both directions, are not going to listen to you. Because if you just expect it, then you won't be disappointed when they don't. Now, that doesn't mean we're shutting off the possibility of learning and growing with each other and observing something that makes a bigger impact, of course. But I just want to, somewhere, if you're that person, if you're that woman who is always, I've researched lots of stuff. I know lots of stuff. I definitely have an invested interest, although I've let go of it over the years, of being right. I don't have to be right. And it's not about me being right. It's about me wanting to help people not suffer. However, that's a control issue. That was one of my addictions. And I have learned how to let people suffer the consequences of their own decisions. Thank you, past relationships, for that. Okay, that was my lesson. So my addiction was gathering information and controlling outcomes, or wanting to educate people to control an outcome so you wouldn't suffer the same as somebody else did or I did or whatever. But if you're that person, you're the woman who always has to be right, or you're the nag who's always telling your spouse to do this or do this or do this, or you're the husband or the partner, the man who's telling the woman, why do you always do that? Or why are you always late? Or whatever. Just plan for it. Stop teaching your partner. Do what you do. This is a separate conversation for another time. We're going to teach you.
I want to ask this, though. I want to ask this because one of the things that you said, I think it's important to understand the consequences for some of the behavior. So, for example, let's just say that you have a partner that is constantly late for everything, and you've grown tired of saying you need to stop being late, and they feel like you're nagging them when they're late, and they're not right, and you know that you're right because they're always late, and you need to make sure that you're on time because you don't want your reputation going down the tubes about your timeliness. So what are the consequences when you say, I'm getting in the car at 4 o'clock, we have to be there by 4:30. I'm getting in the car at 4 o'clock. If you're not in the car at 4 o'clock, I'm just going to pull away. I'm sorry for doing that, but I need to be on time. So how do you handle that kind of conversation with someone that has a partner that's constantly late? And by the way, I'm not referring to you at all about any of that.
I know. Well, this is part of, the work of nonviolent communication that I teach. When people get frustrated, it looks like this. You're always late. I'm going to be late. Blah, 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 blah. And the person's upset. And you think, well, it's their fault. You're being a victim by saying it's their fault. It's not their fault. They, by themselves, are not on time. So you have a choice if you want to be on time that you can offer a consequence. What I would recommend is that you have the conversation ahead of time in a non-triggered situation. You don't do it. You don't decide it while you're doing it. You're not in the car and you're like, hey, if you're not coming in 5 minutes, I'm leaving. No, like the day before, the week before, hey, you have a propensity for being late, and I really need to be on time because I feel better. I'm calmer. I can deliver my service, product, personality, whatever, more from the place of authenticity and feeling a good, strong foundation when I'm on time, even early, and I've got time to prepare. I'm not asking you to be different. Here's what's going to happen. If you need your time and space because you don't want to be early, because you have a casual relationship with time, then we'll take separate cars. It's that simple. If you'd like to go together, would it be okay to say that let's 5-10 minutes before we're supposed to leave that you're in the car and you make them have an agreement? There's an understanding from a place of which is better for you, because you have to come from what you need and then try to work together to find a solution that works for everybody. You're not going to ask that person or yell at them or blame them if you know that's who they are. Oh my gosh. I'm not even going to mention their names, people that I've worked with, colleagues of mine for years. One of them is always late to everything, personally, professionally, always late. The other one never sticks to a schedule about anything, and yet continues to tell me they want to do things together. It took me probably 3 years to come to terms with and be at peace with accepting them for who they are and doing what I need to do in spite of it. So you can speed up the learning process by having the conversation, and then you have to offer the consequence. And that's where people get uncomfortable because they think then they're going to be mad at me and we're going to have a fight, and I don't want that.
Yeah, they're already playing the story out in their head about what's going to happen, which builds the frustration that much more.
But if you don't offer the consequence, and you can do it with love, and you just let them, it's like a child that can't speak who is demanding a toy or food or something or crying, and then you go, woo, over here, and then the child automatically changes focus, and then they feel better. Like, you have to let them either cry it out, the baby, let the adult be upset. It's okay. They're only going to change if they have the consequence to react to. But you need to stand your ground from a loving place and say, this is what I need. And I'd love for us to go together and be efficient and not waste gas and not take 2 cars and not have to pay for 2 parking spots. But in order to do that, we have to come to a compromise about how we get there. I need to be on time. And I'm not telling you to be early. But if we can't decide together, we have to figure out a way for us both to get what we want.
Okay.
Yes?
Yeah, I'm with you.
So you're not, when you accept that you can't control anyone, and actually, hopefully most of you heard the July 4th show where I gave you the little bit of Abraham about control and giving up action control when you have no choice, which is basically what happens to people. It's the same thing. I would recommend to continue the practice of exaggerating the issue to the point of no control. My spouse is uncontrollable. I cannot control him. My children are uncontrollable. My government is uncontrollable. They're out of control. Everyone is out of control. If you go there, then just act from the place of whatever you need, and with love and compassion, of course, and understanding for other people. So please, if you're the control freak of the relationship, although it would be great for all of you to put up a note somewhere that said, do not teach said person. Do not try and teach. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have a conversation, because one of the things that I definitely recommend, like, so Doug and I did that Imago couples worksheet. I asked permission. Would it be okay? I didn't come in here and demand it, right?
No, you asked. I thought it was a great idea. We haven't done it since January, like you said, and I thought it was time. And look at the amazing things that have happened in the last. When did we do that?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Just it's amazing the results just from that one session. You get so much of a clearer, deeper, richer understanding on what is going on in your partner's brain. And that the things that they are triggered by are not because you have done anything, but you can see how when someone is triggered, how it can escalate beyond a point where you really think, oh my gosh, you're bringing in 17 other subjects of things that have happened past negatively. And really, it's just about that one trigger.
When we went to Esalen, I think we talked about we were the youngest couple there, meaning the youngest together, been together. And so that made us stick out with Harville and Helen. And one of the things that they recommended is that you attend one of their events once a year for your relationship. Again, it's like putting in the time and investment into maintaining a high level of communication and interest and connection and clearing out any of the debris. So that way, over time, you're not building up resentments from things you haven't discussed. So, I can't stress enough. It's not just about it's not even about having the quote unquote right partner. When we were at New Media Summit, I think maybe in Austin, there was somebody who was there who her whole spiel was helping people find the right partner. It was in the partner selection that was the problem. And I was thinking, oh, lady, no, it's not. It is not about partner selection as much as is about being the right partner and then allowing the people who are the right people to, in alignment with that. You're still going to attract somebody to work your stuff out with. Don't think it's, yes, Doug hit the list on so many levels and then some. But the same issue that I have not resolved in my past relationship is now here in our relationship and vice versa. But now the difference is I can come at it with some compassion, concern, and a request for both of us, because we both want greatness out of this relationship, and the only way to get it is to take some of these wounds and work on them together.
Agreed. I love that.
Any last and final words about Trouble in Paradise and sort of anything that you have thought about in the last 2 weeks, or maybe even before that a little bit? Were you having concerns when the tension was higher with this whole looking for a place? And I mean, you just sort of shut down a little bit. You didn't tell me during that, like, hey, until we had our blow up.
I don't know, because of my past experiences in dealing with a partner that was so uncommunicative or always processing and never sharing her feelings. It made it very challenging for me to even approach the subject of, can we just talk about this? Because can we talk about this? That was a question that was never positively responded to. It was always, I'm processing this. And it was highly ineffective way of problem solving. So you're left with, and because I didn't have the tools that I have now in understanding that some of the things that she was processing really weren't about her, they were mostly about me. So I'm not blaming her for having the processing time. I'm blaming myself for not understanding how to deal with the shit that was going on at the time, because of how I was processing it. I wasn't even handling it. These were my wounds that she was opening, not anything to do with her. So, and I didn't give her the space, the safe space to have a conversation with me, even if she was ready to, because I just came at every conversation with, okay, how am I going to prove myself right? And that's never an effective way to handle a conversation. You have to work at this together. You got to work on your wounds. You got to work on the relationship. And, again, I take responsibility for the failed relationship because most of it was me, and she has to take responsibility for what she brought to the table, which I don't think that she ever did.
And she may never will.
Right.
So for those of you that are out there who are feeling similar, maybe you're in the same relationship and you don't even know where to start, and your toolbox isn't quite as full as mine. This is where therapy, coaching, retreats. This is where those things become necessary. Wouldn't that be nice? They're necessary, because if you can't figure out a way to understand each other, to share your thoughts and feelings, and to take responsibility for where they come from, then it becomes a blame game, a victim mentality, a you hurt me, you don't care about me, you don't care how I feel. And that won't stop until you're done. And then your relationship is over, and then you're going to take those beliefs with you, and you're probably going to repeat them again. So while you know that I'm not a fan of traditional therapy, sometimes, and there have been clients and people that I know that have gone to several different people, and they kind of found somebody that works for them. And maybe it's, going to take 6 months or 7 years to actually get anywhere really deep. But you can get the Imago book and the workbook. But, having somebody to mediate is a not great place. It's going to be necessary if you can't find any way to bridge the gap between you and your partner.
And you can always find a potential solution at the weekend retreat in January that we are having. I want to promote it to the nth degree, because I know the work that's going to be done there, because I've seen bits and pieces of the work at different workshops and retreats that you have done and that we have attended, but all together in one space, in one time. And I mean,
you're talking about the couples retreat.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually not over a weekend. It's actually smack dab in the middle of the week, because New Year's
sorry,
Eve.
I meant during a
That's
holiday.
okay. That's okay. Yeah, it's during a holiday. It's because of how much I care about sort of reining in a new year with a new energy, and wanting to do some of my woo-woo practices around it, which we did last year and everyone seemed to enjoy. I do it every year, but bringing that along with this reflection, along with some ahas, along with some new ways of looking at something that really can shift. I mean, we offer tools on this show that I know for a lot of you can change everything. I mean, like the love language conversation, it can be a game changer, because before, when you were interpreting someone's behavior or words as a lack of love, if you could identify that their love language is not yours, maybe you realize that they didn't mean it the way you took it.
Oh, that was funny. We just had sorry, I don't mean to get off track here, but by the way, just do the retreat. How did they get to the retreat?
jjflizanes.com/couples retreat, or just go to jjflizanes.com to the event page.
We had a dinner with a friend of ours, couple friend of ours, a man and woman that are a couple, and we introduced them to the love languages, and they had never heard of them, if I remember correctly, right? Or maybe they had heard of them, but in passing. I think she had heard of them. He had never heard of them. And it was so amazing to discover what their love languages are just in the process. And think about it. What are your love languages? Think about the book. Think about the 5 love languages, and think about who you are and what your partner's love language is, and why you guys may not connect, even on that simple level of what are your love languages and how do you show your love.
I now know who you're talking about. I had to stop for a second. There was a lot of margaritas that night, so I'm surprised you even remember that conversation.
Yes, it was a lot of margaritas.
Yeah. So the couples retreat is definitely one place. We won't be doing Imago, but we will be releasing What Weighs You Down, January 10th through the 12th. 10th
Wait,
to the 12th.
we will be doing Imago at the retreat.
Yes, at the couples retreat.
Oh, okay. I thought, wait, don't take that away from me.
Yeah. Couples retreat is December 30th to January 2nd in Palm Springs. We have Releasing What Weighs You Down, and couples can come to that as well. And that's going to be at 1440 Multiversity outside of Santa Cruz, 20 minutes from San Jose Airport. And that is on 75 acres of redwoods. It's an amazing campus, and you can come to jjflizanes.com and find out more information about Releasing What Weighs You Down 2020.
Wow, that's crazy.
Right.
2020, it's the year I can clearly see.
And there's some other local events that we'll talk about a little bit closer to the date, and that I will send out some emails about. But so there are ways to, of course, then there's individual work and couples work and things like that. That doesn't have to happen at a retreat. And again, I just want you to understand that having a third person or a situation where, I mean, there are free groups. There's a group like Al-Anon and AA. There are organizations out there that deal with codependence and having codependent tendencies, and there are groups that you can go to for free and where there's lots of different couples, and I'm sure there are church groups you can find and meetup groups you can find. So there's a lot of stuff that's out there. But just know that if you're in a situation where you don't have any tools, or your tools are not accessible because you're just so triggered and you're not willing to necessarily do the work on your own to be the person who could bring the tool to your relationship, then it's time for some outside help, because the outside help will save what's going on and help you to change it. You only will do what you know and are aware of what's going on. And that's where having a coach, a mentor, a therapist, a teacher, a trainer be able to see something you can't see. So with that, I just want to say that, relationships take time. Relationships take work. It doesn't have to be painful. It can be fun. I know I was excited when we did, even though I was probably dead for the rest of the day. I cried so damn much in our couples dialogue because I was really allowing myself to go there. And you were wonderful to hold the space for me because you knew it wasn't about you. And I could really, I was even commenting on my ugly crying as I was ugly crying. I was like, I can't believe I've never ugly cried in front of anybody before.
It wasn't so bad. It really wasn't. It might have been your ugly cry, but it was okay. You need the space to do that. And I respect that. I respect the fact that you can show that much vulnerability in front of me, and I appreciate you as a partner, and I appreciate you as a best friend and a lover, and I appreciate you in so many ways, and that was just one more level of how I appreciate you, is seeing you open up that clearly in front of me. So, I love you, baby.
Love you too, honey. And I'm glad you brought that up. I appreciate you as well. So you're probably thinking, how do I get my hands on the couples dialogue? And I do have it, but I don't think I'm supposed to be giving it out to just anybody. It might be available at harvilleandhelen.com. You might be able to ask them for it. It's definitely, we'll talk about it in Safe Conversations when they're back on the show, but one of the tools, so I'm just going to say what it is. The very first thing you do as you look at your partner is you offer an appreciation. And that is the key for switching the energy to be able to say, rather, I'm going to blame you and I'm mad at you. It automatically switches the energy, and you start by saying, besides asking permission to have a conversation right now, is this a good time? And the partner says yes, or the partner says no. If the partner says no, you don't get offended. You reschedule it based on when they're available. But after you get permission to have this conversation, then you say, I'd like to share an appreciation with you. And that is so important. So try that out next time you and your partner have a fight.
See how difficult that is to share that appreciation when you're in the middle of a fight.
No, well, wait until you calm down. Okay, if you're angry, let it dissipate. Do some work to see if you can't come from a different perspective. And then just do the appreciation and say, you know what? I know we've had a fight. I know that I'm a little bit angry and you're probably not very happy with me right now, but I have an appreciation about you I'd like to share with you. Could I share that right now?
I even like playing the appreciation game, even when we don't have the full couples dialogue, which we do quite a bit.
We do, and it's a very healthy practice. But it's so important, even if your partner's love language is not words of affirmation, there's no person alive that doesn't like hearing something you appreciate about them. We live in such a negative environment of everything. All we do is talk about what's wrong with the world and people making decisions and how that person shouldn't do this and that person shouldn't do that. That it just is such a nice, refreshing way to amplify and tune into the best of all of us. So I would recommend using that practice, regardless if you know nothing else and do nothing else, just do that. So I think that's enough for Trouble in Paradise. Thank you for participating, my love. I appreciate you very much.
You are welcome. And this has been another episode of The Nice Guys on Business.
Right.
Ford Mustang, the early generation?
Oh, yeah. Doug has a new podcast. If you know anyone that has an old Mustang, he has started a show. Why don't you tell everybody about the show?
Oh, the show is wonderful. It's so much fun. The show is called Ford Mustang, the early years, the first generations, for those that own Mustangs in the 60s, let's call it, from the mid 60s to the early 70s. And I interview restorers of Mustangs. I interview shop owners, owners of Mustangs. It will be totally boring if you're not a Mustang enthusiast. But if you have a Mustang enthusiast in your life, even the newer ones, people will love listening to the old style Mustang conversation.
And if you're a listener of this show and you have an old Mustang, make sure Doug knows that. And if you want to be interviewed by him and be on the show, he can interview and you'd have a great conversation because you'd mix all this stuff together.
Oh my gosh. Relationships, Mustangs, and business. What a great conversation we're going to have.
Where can people find out more about that?
You can go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Play is where it is right now. Overcast also.
So none of those places can send you an email. So go to jjflizanes.com, fill out the contact form, and I will pass it on to Doug if you are a listener of this show and you have an old Mustang and you'd like to either be on his show.
Or they can just send an email to doug@turnkeypodcast.com. That'll work out also.
Great. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Love you guys.